Hello, YouTube, and welcome back to Kind Heart Homestead. My name is Ben, and I'm here on our off-grid property in the mountains of Virginia. I'm continuing the progress where I left off on last episode of our solar shed series. You can see here I'm installing the toilet flange finally into the slab because I have finally got a toilet. We're basically going to be focusing on plumbing fixtures in this video. So if you want to stick around, you can watch me install this toilet, our shower, as well as a utility sink in our laundry area. So we'll go ahead and talk about the toilet flange a bit, since that's what we're looking at here. I've never installed a flange in a slab before. In fact, I've never really dealt with slabs at all. So I had to buy a special drill bit that can drill these pilot holes through the concrete. And then I'm using Tapcon screws to secure the toilet flange into the concrete. Obviously, this PVC toilet flange is glued, but I also put some spray foam in there just for insulation purposes and to keep anything out of that area. This will expand and probably fill up that whole cavity under the flange. I'm finally installing those Tapcons now, but I'm having an issue with, I'd say 2 or 3 of them. I can't exactly remember. They seem to have stripped out the hole, but as long as I get most of the screws in, it should be fine. The next task is to cut off the rough-in copper line that you can see protruding from the wall there. I have this special tool for very low clearance areas. This tool is basically a combination of a pizza cutter and a clamp. There is this tiny little wheel that acts like a pizza cutter and gradually scores the surface of the copper, and the clamp keeps the tension. There is a knob so you can adjust the tension. After each revolution, I tighten it just a bit until it finally cuts off. I'm using compression fittings, which require 2 wrenches to tension the nut around the copper. And now I'm unboxing the toilet. This is a special low clearance toilet that I got from Home Depot. This was around $200, so not too expensive, but it does look pretty fancy. I do prefer the unibody styles of toilets, so there's no weird gaps and seams between the tank and the toilet. I needed low clearance because the door swings into the bathroom towards the toilet, and a standard length toilet would not allow enough clearance for the door to actually swing all the way open to the wall. This toilet sticks out 24 inches plus 5/8 of an inch from the wall, and this is a 12-inch rough-in toilet. Now that the toilet's done, I will go ahead and install the shower pan. I bought the shower as a full kit, including the doors. I'm securing the shower pan with spray foam to the floor, but the foam will also act as a permanent shim, bringing it up to level. Well, we've had a very productive trip so far. If you recall from a previous video, we have power to the bathroom, and that is somewhat important because it just means that we're making a bit more progress. What I was focusing more on this time was the plumbing fixtures. I have this compact toilet completely installed. It's functioning, and I added the half-inch PEX for the building up to our little manifold system. It has its own shut-off just in case there's a leak in here. I can turn it off just for this building without turning off our garden and our camper. I've also started to put in the prefabricated corner shower system, I guess you could call it. The shower pan was very tricky. I have that spray foam under it and it's mostly level. These pieces are not attached. I just have them sitting up here and I'm putting tape down the sides. I'm planning to use a laser level to transfer the marks of these little shelf things onto the tape because lumber is going to be inside these pockets. The manual does have very precise measurements for where the 2x3s and the 1x3s all need to go, but they're measured from the floor. And the problem we had was our floor is not exactly level. I did my slab myself, and I don't have any experience with slabs. So I used some spray foam to try to essentially shim it back up to the level position. So I think what I'm better off doing is just transferring these lines and putting the lumber in where they need to go. What you can see here is the perimeter framing that I added on top of the wall, just as the manual requires. There's actual 2x4s I'm using going over the tops, and I think it's 1x3s going down the sides. The ones on the side essentially just has to hold the very edge of the prefabricated shower walls, whereas these studs that go across horizontally, I'm using 2x4s instead of 2x3s because they seem to fit, even though the manual says to use 2x3s. Those horizontal ones are actually kind of fall into those little raised pocket looking things. They kind of look like shelves, but they're really too sloped and too shallow to fit anything on. But I think that's where it gets its rigid structure from. Here is a close-up of how the two pieces get attached together to form the corner shower. I did put a bead of mold-resistant silicone in between, and then I'm also finishing it off with another bead that I'll use my finger to smooth off. It's a very flimsy plastic that they chose. It's nothing like the big cast iron or fiberglass inserts that kind of last forever. And it came with nuts and bolts to keep that clamped, so I don't anticipate any water intrusion in there, but I'm trying to keep everything from being scuffed by keeping the plastic on it. But anytime I need to run a bead of sealant, I need to pull the plastic back just enough to where it doesn't interfere with the bead. So here's about where it's going, but I still need to continue transferring these marks because I have several more boards to add behind the insert. I don't know exactly why this manufacturer chose to require more framing on the inside of the finished room. Maybe it's because it's supposed to be for a retrofit where there's already a room completed and then somebody decides suddenly to add a shower. This is a bathroom. The shower was obvious. We always wanted it in there. And it may have been a mistake to get this kit because of how confusing it was to install, but now I know for next time when we go to build the house, I'll have a better understanding of what to look for. We definitely want a sturdier prefabricated system if we do choose another prefabricated system. I know about some of the limitations of those, like you might have to bring it into the building before the framing is done, especially before the drywall is done, because a lot of those require your nailing flange to be concealed by the drywall. This is not one of those units that has a nailing flange, so I'm interested to see how this all looks when it's done, but I'm pretty confident I'll be able to make it look good no matter what. Here's a close-up of all the added framing built up over the drywall that the manual requires. Again, I used 2x4s instead of 2x3s because they fit. It's just a bit of a tighter tolerance and I have to be exact. I'm putting a large bead of big stretch between the shower pan and the drywall. This is mold-resistant drywall. It's that green board. It's also primed over. I didn't want to waste paint in some of that area behind there. That's why there's a white splotch. That's actually just the unpainted primer. But even though the manual didn't require this step, I was still a bit skeptical of how flimsy the shower walls are. So I wanted that backup protection underneath in case water was able to bounce up and get around any sort of sealant I used on the walls. Even if it touches the drywall, it's going to be redirected back down into the shower pan. I have a bit of a reveal for you guys. I wasn't able to capture all of this in a recording, but I have our corner shower pretty much complete. All I have to do now is finish up the trim kit installation, which is essentially the matching brushed nickel finishes for the shower head and the cap here for the valves. But I also need to pull down all this plastic, vacuum it out, and make sure everything's ready to go. And then, once this is hooked up, I'm going to test the water out. So, hope you enjoy this time lapse of me finishing up the shower. Okay, I just finished up all the plumbing on the other side of this wall in the utility room. I'll show you a close-up of all those components. But for now, I just want to give this a test run and check for leaks. Looks good from here. Here is a close-up of the finished result of the shower. This corner shower was definitely a challenge to install, but now that the trim kit's there and the door is on, it looks professional. You can see behind me I have my bathroom in progress, but also these little stub outs here is the rough-in for our utility sink. It's essentially going to be a laundry sink because this whole wall is going to be dedicated to laundry. We're going to have the washer roughly where it is, and then the dryer between the washing machine and the utility sink. Even though I haven't got far enough along in this room as I'd like to, I'm going to go ahead and install this utility sink. It's been in our shipping container for over a year, and I got this at Costco. It's supposed to be a freestanding stainless sink that comes with a pretty fancy faucet. And I'm pretty sure at a lot of the big stores, you would get that faucet for probably the same price that I got this entire kit. What I need to do is turn off the water so I can cut these copper stub outs and attach my shutoffs that are going to be dedicated to the hot and cold lines. Here I'm unboxing the stainless steel sink from Costco. As you can see here, it's pretty oversized for a room like this, but because it's going to be used for hand washing from the bathroom, as well as laundry, and any other sort of utility things we can think of in the future, potentially maybe washing vegetables, dealing with poultry, things like that, I think it's actually a fairly reasonable size. Anyway, you can see that I used an Allen wrench to secure each of the 4 legs into the slots at the bottom. Then I had to put the drain assembly, which kind of clamps with a threaded connection from the top and the bottom of the hole in the bottom of the sink. That's what the tailpiece attaches to. The tailpiece is that white dangling bit that's sticking off the bottom. I'll cut that off later. This sink uses a single hole faucet assembly, which means both the hot and the cold water lines, as well as any sort of valves and assemblies, all go through the same hole. After that, I am attaching the shutoffs for the hot and cold lines on the wall. Once the valves are installed, I put on these hoses that I purchased. These are standard sink connection hoses that go to your hot and cold valves. It turns out that my sink came with them, and I don't actually need these, so I'm going to return them. I'm not a big fan of the threaded stub outs that require you to use the very flimsy plastic do-it-yourself connections to attach your sink trap to the wall. What I'm doing here is actually gluing my permanent 1.5" PVC connections into the wall. The stub out I left wasn't long enough, so I had to use a coupling to add probably about 6 inches or so. I am using a threaded trap, so the sink will be removable. With the PVC stub out and the tailpiece the appropriate length, it's time to actually connect the drain line. And that's just a matter of sliding the tailpiece into the threaded adapter on the top of the PVC trap so I can tighten it into place and then connect the 2 water lines. Well, the hardest part about connecting this was the tailpiece that comes down from the drain before the trap. And it's because I was trying to put this included little plastic fitting in there. I thought it was a gasket, but it turns out it was making too much space between the bottom of the drain and then the threaded ring that needs to go on it. So by removing this, I was able to actually screw that in. And what I was trying to do before was just keep forcing it, and it could only get like half of a thread and then it would slip off. So I had to remove this, and it looks like this is up and running. I'm pretty excited about that. I used PVC pipe glued fittings, all except for the trap, which is threaded. That means that if we ever have to clean the trap, we can unscrew it from the tailpiece at the bottom of the sink, unscrew the other end from the PVC 90 that kind of goes down into the trap, and just pop the trap right off. And that might be our solution for when we go to paint this room. We can pull the trap off and then pull this away from the wall. We could shut off the hot and cold water and remove the hoses if we need to, but I think we can pull this away from the wall just far enough for a paint roller to fit in. It did come with some sort of bracket to mount this to the wall. I don't think I'm going to worry about that now, but I'm going to call this project done. Now that we have this installed, I'm interested to see how long it takes for the water to get hot. Since we don't have a shower hooked up and we don't really use the laundry machine yet, this might be our only way to really test the flow rate for the hot water. So I'm going to start a stopwatch, see how long it takes. Between 30 and 35 seconds. I couldn't get to the phone quick enough to stop it because I was washing my hands, but it was definitely getting warm fast, and I stopped it once it got uncomfortably warm. I'd say that's pretty good, and it's not much waste of water either. Now that we have a sink in here, I want to go ahead and set up our water filter. I just packed this up and brought it up from South Carolina, where we had been using it to filter our municipal water at my parents' house. We had some special fluoride filters added because of the municipal treatment process. But up here, we're not going to need the fluoride filters because there shouldn't be naturally occurring fluoride in our water. But I do want to still use our regular filters just to filter out any sort of contaminants that could possibly be there. That way we can maximize the cleanliness of our drinking water at least, since we don't have a whole house filter set up for the property at this time. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up and fill it up with water. We've been using this Berkey water filter for a couple of years now. We really like it because it's gravity fed. That means that you don't actually need to have any sort of water pressure or electricity to run it. The weight of the water itself drips it down through the filtration and down into the reservoir. We did recently purchase this glass indicator that'll tell you how full the bottom reservoir is, because if you overflow it, it's going to drip all over your floor. We have a video on our YouTube channel from a couple years ago about how to set up the Berkey for the first time, so go check that out if you're interested. I appreciate you all sticking around until the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed making it, because all of these fixtures combined create a huge milestone for us here on the homestead. We can finally comfortably shower with hot water. We can do our laundry. We can use a toilet with running water. We can wash our hands and filter our drinking water. All of that kind of came to a close at the same time, which is why it's all in the same video. But there's a lot of other stuff that you haven't seen as well. We have the garden coming along behind me here. We have air conditioning in the shed now. That's going to be in an upcoming video. We have solar panels hooked up, recharging our batteries every day. So if you want to see how any of that stuff works, or any of these other accomplishments and future projects we have coming down the pipeline, go ahead and subscribe, and we will see you next time here on Kind Heart Homestead. Thanks.